I hope you will find out what SRHR means at the end of this talk, but I like the struggle continues and the hashtag. But let me start with 3 years ago, where I was attending a summer course on bioethics in the beautiful Italy. And there was a gynecologist from Chile that, yes, there we are. So 3 years ago, in the beautiful Italy, I was at a bioethics course to talk about it with different students. And there was a gynecologist from Chile who took the stand to talk to us about the ethical decision that changed her life. She took us back to a day when a young woman came into her practice, bleeding, crying, and hopeless. The young woman had attempted an abortion and had damaged her own life and body. The gynecologist was in doubt because she was stuck between doing her profession and saving the woman's life, but also between the law in Chile, which criminalizes abortion. But she didn't have a lot of time to think about it, so she decided to finalize the abortion and save the woman's life. We were all shocked to hear the story, and we were astonished by the choice that she made. And then she joked about how she ended up in jail for a year, but that gave her the time to think about her decision, although she never regretted it. For me, it was very weird to hear, because how can you end up in jail for saving a woman's life, for a decision that she made? I think there in Italy, the seed was planted for my passion and ambition to work on SRHR, which stands for Sexual, Reproductive Health and Rights. And it is about a lot of things. It's about, it combines a lot of things. It's about sexual health, it's about sexual diversity, it's about an abortion or your choice. And let me introduce myself then. I am Melodi Tamarzians, the youth ambassador on SRHR. So I work within the Dutch ministry, which is in collaboration with the NGO Choice. And my job is to talk to young people from all around the world about their sexual and reproductive health and rights. And I use all those examples and experiences to push for policies that the young people believe is important to them, at the national but also at the international level. And before I started to work as a youth ambassador, SRHR felt as a topic that is quite far away in countries with poverty, social injustice, inequality. But I found out throughout the last months that I worked on this job that it's actually quite close. It's happening every day. SRHR is a topic that affects us all, every day, in every country, because it's simply about love, sex, and life. But I have a question for you. I hope I find out how to... Yes. Who in this audience, by showing hands, thinks that they are affected by sexual reproductive health and rights? Yes, so like 25%. Okay, let's see how you answer that at the end of the talk. I will take you back within my experience that I've had within my role so far in the past 8 months. And I want to do that by introducing you to 3 very inspiring people I met so far. And the quotes that really hit me when they told me about it. Let's start in Ethiopia. I was there last October in Addis Ababa, and I met amazing young feminists working on girls' rights. At the end of the meeting, we had a young girl called Nadia came up to me and she asked me, how did you felt when you had your first period? I didn't really know where she was going with the question, but I shared my experience. And Nadia nodded and said, do you want to hear mine? So she told me all about how ashamed and disgusted she was when she had her first period, and that she tried to hide it from the family with very weird materials that she would find, and she was so embarrassed by what was happening. After a few days, she gathered all her courage, picked her words very carefully to go up to her mom and tell her, or ask her basically, what is going on down there. But then she panicked and she just yelled, "Mom, there's blood coming out of me." And the very first thing that her mom said to her was, "Well, then you are not allowed to play with boys anymore." Which is weird to hear, because that's not the first thing I've heard. And for the first years that Nadia had her menstruation, and again, with a lot of girls in her community, she was ashamed, she was disgusted, not allowed to play with boys anymore. And also, there were no sanitary pads or tampons available. So she would drop out of school once a month and eventually drop completely out of school because she was far behind. I mean, you can understand why that hit me, because of course I was also very ashamed, very disgusted and struggling with sanitary pads when I first had my period, but I didn't drop out of school. I kept hanging out with my friends, female and male, and nothing really changed that much. It's just uncomfortable, and I mean, if you're young and you have your period, you just try to find ways that no one will find out, and you think that it's written all over your forehead, that everyone knows it. But I didn't have that many struggles. So Nadia must have seen the shock at my face, and she said, well, you know what I'm doing now? I am making organic pads out of organic materials, because when my little sister couldn't go to school anymore, I thought I should do something. I lost my future, but she should not. But that was in 2010, and now Nadia is this young entrepreneur collecting tampons, making organic pads to keep young girls where they belong, in schools. And she really hit me with that story. And I believe that we should talk about it more, because in the Netherlands, I mean, sanitary pads are available, but there is still a little taboo on it. It's hard to talk about it, definitely when you're young. But do realize that in other countries, such as Ethiopia, there is this big taboo on something so normal for the half of the population. And that's why a lot of girls, it takes them by surprise. They can't go to school anymore because they don't have any accessibility to pads, which means that it's very hard for them to ever reach social or economic independency if they're not able to go to school because of this simple thing. So I want to ask all of us from here to make this commitment together to not make it more uncomfortable or awkward than it already is. I mean, half of the population is having it every month, and it is what it is. So let's not secretly get the tampon on your way to the toilet, but just make it a walk of pride. And we owe that to Nadia and her little sister, because they are even having harder struggles to get through, and we can at least do that for them. But that was just one person I met that inspired me. Then all the way back to the Netherlands, where I met a Syrian guy, Youssef, 21 years old, when he left Syria during the war. I ran into him at this refugee community space kind of thing in Amsterdam, and there was an evening organized about sexuality and love for every person with other beliefs, religions, lives, but now living in the Netherlands. And the evening was ended, and I ran into Youssef. We started talking. We walked together to the metro. So I asked him how he felt about the evening and the talks we had. He giggled and he responded with, I always thought I am a boy and I like girls, but I didn't know there were so many flavors in sexuality. We burst into laughter and said our goodbyes, but I kept thinking about what Youssef had said. So 2 weeks later, I went back and I wanted to catch up with him. So we talked about the Dutch cold weather, about sexuality, how things were back in Syria. And he really opened up and told me how he was struggling with his identity, and that evening really got stuck in his head. He had so many questions left. What are the choices? Is it safe to use condoms? Because sometimes he was used to it being pierced and not working anymore. Can you get tested for sexually transmitted diseases? Where? How much does it cost? And he was really struggling. And I want to ask you guys, how many of you have had sexuality education now? Well, that's quite a lot. And how many of you, sometimes I have to look back because I'm not sure if it's interlined. How many of you have felt that the sexuality education you got has made you well prepared to make decisions about your sexuality? Ooh, that's few. Still happy to see some hands though. There is one other word I would like to introduce to you, a little abbreviation. That's the last one. It's comprehensive sexuality education, CSE, which means that sexuality education should be comprehensive, like it should be speaking to the young people. It should include a lot of topics, not only the sex part. And in the Netherlands, every school is obligated to provide it to their students, but obviously it doesn't always happen in an appropriate way. And I even found out that in the Bible Belt, which is a very conservative religious part in the Netherlands, sometimes kids are told how to persuade homosexuals to become hetero, happening in the Netherlands. Well, that is not comprehensive, I would say. That's more propaganda. It's messing with kids. It's confusing their identities at a very young age. And that's like in the country that we think is tolerant, that is working a lot on sexuality, but then we can't control what is told by the teacher or the parent. And I told you Youssef was optimistic and funny, and he was really into life. So when I ran another time into him, he told me, you know what I'm doing now? I'm going around a community center of refugees, and I'm asking them about love and sex, and I'm talking with the little kids about it and telling them how I'm struggling, but it's fine, I'll get there. So I found that very inspiring. And that's the thing that's the second message I would like that it comes across, because sexuality education is so much more than the sex part. It's not about scaring young people so that they will wait. It's not about the actual sex part. It's about sexual diversity. It's about, yes, this is from Mean Girls. I love this screenshot. It's not about scaring people, right? Because not all teachers, but I also had a teacher which told me, like, no, you wait until you can't wait anymore. I was like, oh my God, okay, never sex, because I will die. It's more than that, right? It's about what your options are, which contraceptives you can use, whether there is abortion, what is your sexual pleasure, what are your body rights, and it is up to you to make a decision if, how, and when you want to have a relationship, a family. It's all up to you, and that should be in sexuality education. So I want to say, let's have openly talks about sex. We all know the song, I think, maybe this generation doesn't, about Let's Talk About Sex, Baby. Yeah, that song. I'm gonna try to use that more when I talk to young people, because it is normal in a lot of ways, but it's always about the biology part of sex. And we should talk about so much more than that. Because if young people get the right information, they will make the right decisions for themselves. And this is to parents and teachers talking about it. Only uninformed people will take unnecessary risks to find out the information that we try to hide from them. Let's put it all on the table and have faith in our own beliefs that they will make the right decision if we do. And CSE is actually the fundament of all sexual reproductive issues. That's why I want to talk about the next topic. I left you a little bit there hanging with the story about abortion, so I'll get back to that, because that is one of my main focuses as a youth ambassador. Why is that? Because 6.9 million women each year have complications from unsafe abortions, and 22,000 women die because of it. That is a lot. It's because of unsafe abortions. And this is not even all the numbers, because it's hard to register unsafe abortions, because it's clandestine mostly. In the Netherlands, maybe you can expect it is legal, but it doesn't mean that there is no taboo, there is no stigma, and the discussions are very sensitive and intense. I was giving a workshop a few months ago in Amsterdam about sexual reproductive health and rights and human rights, and getting into discussion with the young kids. And we got a very intense discussion on abortion, whether it should be legal, under which conditions, and the kids were really in it. I couldn't really put them out and say, like, okay, next discussion, but they were really into it. What struck me the most is that there was this girl, 14 years old, very religious, a Muslim girl, intensely opposing against abortion. But what happened next is that a fellow student asked her, okay, then do you think it should be banned if you're that against it? And the young girl said, no, I don't care what other people chose to do. It's up to them, but I won't do such a thing. And I think that is very courageous to say. That is a young girl, very religious, knowing the difference between her choice and someone else's choice. That is a skill that a lot of politicians and high-level people have yet to learn. And coming to our big friend we all know, Trump, it should be in all presentations at least once. I don't know if you know this, but on the first day that he became president, he signed the Mexico City policy, I won't get technical about it, but that means that every organization abroad working on abortion will lose all their fundings if they keep working on abortion, even if it's only providing information. So you can see Trump and a lot of male administrators are making a decision affecting millions of people's lives. That is hard to believe for me. And I have found that impact in Mozambique. I was there 2 weeks earlier, and in Mozambique, abortion is legal, and it's for free. But no one that I spoke to knew about that, because organizations are afraid to talk about abortion, because they will lose funding because of Trump. So they don't talk about it. Girls that can have free, legal, and safe abortions go to unsafe abortions and die or have complications. And this is something all men decided for women. These were 3 small examples of sexual reproductive health and rights. Topics from menstruation, what could lead to dropping out of school, abortion, but also sexuality education. And the most important thing about SRHR is I found out it is very close. It is happening every day for everyone in every country. But more importantly, it's interlined with global issues. Because if a girl cannot go to school because she has no sanitary pads, or because she has a teenage pregnancy, or she got married way too early, then how can we have social and economic independence? Or if girls and boys can't have any contraceptives, then they will be infected with sexual transmitted diseases, or in danger of HIV and AIDS, and that will impact their lives. Or if we don't get the right information in schools, we are left with misconceptions, with confusions, and maybe even that will stimulate us to draw homophobic things on, hope it's coming, yes. This was the Suit Supply commercial of last week. This happened last week in the Netherlands, where homophobic drawings were made on the pictures of 2 men kissing. And there was a Twitter, I hope it will come, which said, apparently, drawing a swastika is more normal than 2 men kissing. Happening in the Netherlands, where we feel we're very tolerant, we're very pro-gay, and then this happens. So I want to ask you, are you in any way affected by SRHR, by sexual reproductive health and rights? It's too dark for me to see, but I'm just going to say, yeah, I see more hands. I hope that we can use these things to give further, because you are the young people that have the power to make this change. We as young persons know what is more important to us. No one is more capable of knowing what is more important to us than we do. Young people are the realities behind the policies made about whether you can express sexuality, whether you can have contraceptives, and if abortion is legal. And I believe in the infinite power of young people to make the change for themselves and their communities, and I will do my part, because I believe that everyone has the right to express their identity without fear, shame, or jeopardizing their own health or life. Sexual reproductive health and rights cannot be a privilege. It should not depend on your age, your gender, where you're from, or how your government feels about it. Sexual reproductive health and rights, SRHR, is inherently connected to human beings. And I think everyone at the end of the day is as human as you and I. Thank you.